Hi, welcome back to Fat Doctor TV. This is Dr. Greg Oliver. Today let's talk about diabetes. When I ask most people what they think diabetes is, they've got a fairly good understanding. They say it has to do with your sugar and your sugar being too high or eating too much sugar. Well, that's just a very, very basic part of diabetes. So today, in a few minutes, we're going to go over what diabetes is and give you a better understanding about it. Diabetes is so closely linked to our obesity epidemic. When I first started practice of medicine 27 years ago, I would diagnose a new diabetic maybe once or twice a month. Now we're diagnosing maybe 7 to 10 per week. So we are in a diabetic epidemic, there's no question about it. But we also know we're in an obesity epidemic, and so the two are very closely associated. Diabetes is, in a nutshell, our body is starving in the midst of plenty of food. So there's plenty of nutrition for us, but our body is literally starving because it can't get the nutrition where it's needed. So let me explain this, and this is a very simplistic and maybe not the best analogy, but I've been using it for years with patients. I explain it like a car. When we go to the gas station, we put fuel or gas in our gas tank. Well, when we eat, that's putting fuel in our gas tank. So we eat food, we put fuel in our gas tank. Now, the fuel has to get from the gas tank to the engine. That's through a fuel line. That would be nutrients in our body or the food we eat being broken down in our digestive tract and then getting moved through our fuel line, which is basically our blood vessels, our arteries, moving it to the tissues of our body so that our body can get the nutrients. And then it has to get into the engine of our car. Gasoline has to get into the engine of our car. And so it doesn't just dump it into the engine. There's actually something very specific that puts it in there in the right quantities at the right amount at the right time. And it used to be called a carburetor, and it would be basically adjustable, so we could put fuel or gasoline into our engine. If we wanted to go faster, we'd give it more. If we wanted to slow down, we'd give it less. If we wanted to stop the engine, we'd turn it off. In our body, nowadays in cars, by the way, it's called fuel injectors. But in our body, we have these fuel injectors, and they're called insulin. So insulin is what takes the fuel out of our fuel line or our arteries, puts it into our tissues. In our body, our engines are things like our heart, our lungs, our organs, our muscles, our brain. So they have to have fuel. Now, in our bodies, glucose is the #1 fuel source. Our body prefers to use glucose. So all the carbohydrates you eat get converted into glucose. All the proteins you eat get converted into glucose. But the fats don't get converted into glucose, or if they do, it's a very complicated process. They can, but it's a very complicated process. And so when fat is burned, it's not burned as glucose in our body. So let's focus on the glucose, all right? So diabetes is really two different problems. One, it's a problem of high blood sugars. And those high blood sugars over time gum up the engine, gum up the blood vessels, and damage our blood vessels in our body and decrease the flow of blood to our organs. And once the blood flow is decreased to our organs, well, we don't live very long. So diabetes is a situation where the fuel injectors, our insulin, is no longer effective, or we're not making enough. There are two types of diabetes. Type 1, which basically is a person who cannot produce any insulin. And we're not going to get into type 1 today. They used to call it juvenile diabetes, but it can occur at any age. We're going to talk about type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is when the pancreas, the organ that basically produces insulin, kind of slows down, and the cells inside the pancreas that make our insulin, called beta cells, they stop working as well. And eventually they don't work very well at all. And it has to do with a lot of things. Genetics plays a role in this. Certainly diet plays a huge role in this. The larger the body, the more difficult it is for us to be sensitive to our own insulin, the more difficult it is to manufacture insulin. There's lots of factors here. A diet high in carbohydrates tends to be worse for the diabetic and precipitate diabetes. Too many calories in the diet, not enough exercise. There's lots of reasons that diabetes can exist, and in fact the exact cause of diabetes is still not really known, but all these factors play a huge role in it. So here's the key. You want to avoid diabetes, look at your family history. Do you have diabetes in it? If you do, you need to keep your body as lean as possible. You need to eat a very healthy diet that's higher in proteins, that uses complex carbohydrates, not simple sugars all the time. You need to keep your calorie intake down, and you also need to exercise on a regular basis. So just some basics today on diabetes. I hope that kind of helps clear it up, that it's not just all about sugar, it's about our pancreas, it's about the loss of the ability to produce insulin over time, and there are lots of factors that contribute to the formation of diabetes. You'd like more information on diabetes? Get a hold of us here at Fat Doctor TV. Hey, look forward to talking to you again. Have a great week or weekend, wherever this finds you. Take care, and we'll see less of you next time.